Beneath the dust of millennia, ancient secrets pulse with untold power. Sacred artifacts that could rewrite history lie hidden in forgotten chambers, while cosmic events preserved in scripture challenge everything modern science thought it knew. From underground chambers beneath Jerusalem's most sacred ground to DNA evidence unlocking the fate of lost civilizations, these are not mere legends. They are mysteries documented by archaeologists, verified by laboratories, and pursued by scholars who risk everything to uncover the truth. Today, we journey into the most shocking biblical mysteries that continue to defy explanation, where ancient texts meet cutting-edge science, and where every discovery raises more questions than it answers. 1. The Ark of the Covenant, the vanishing of God's throne. Hidden beneath the cobblestone streets of Jerusalem's Old City, sealed chambers and forgotten tunnels harbor one of humanity's greatest secrets. For more than 2,500 years, the world's most sacred artifact has remained beyond the reach of archaeologists, treasure hunters, and governments alike. This is the mystery of the Ark of the Covenant, a golden chest that once served as the earthly throne of God himself, now vanished without a trace from the pages of history. According to the Book of Exodus, divine blueprints guided every detail of the Ark's construction. The sacred chest measured precisely 25 cubits long, 15 cubits wide, and 15 cubits high, approximately 4 feet long, 225 feet wide, and 225 feet tall. Craftsmen carved the foundation from acacia wood, then overlaid every surface with pure gold. 2 golden cherubim with outstretched wings crowned the mercy seat, their faces turned toward each other in eternal vigil. Within this holy container rested the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments, Aaron's budding rod, and a golden pot of manna, relics that connected the physical world to the divine realm. The Ark's power transcended mere symbolism. Biblical accounts describe its ability to part the Jordan River, level the walls of Jericho, and strike down those who dared touch it without authorization. When the Philistines captured the Ark, plagues ravaged their cities until they returned it in terror. The presence of God himself was said to dwell between the golden cherubim, making the Ark the most sacred object in human history. Yet, after the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem in 587 BCE, the Ark simply vanished. King Nebuchadnezzar's forces stripped Solomon's temple of gold, silver, and bronze, but no mention appears of the Ark among the plundered treasures. When the Jewish exiles returned to rebuild the Second Temple 70 years later, the Holy of Holies stood empty. The most sacred artifact in Judaism had disappeared without explanation, launching a mystery that has captivated humanity for over 2 millennia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church claims to possess the authentic Ark in the remote highland city of Aksum. Behind the stone walls of the Church of St. Mary of Zion, they say, the golden chest rests under the protection of a single monk who alone may view the sacred relic. This guardian, appointed for life, maintains a vigil that has continued unbroken for centuries. Yet no independent verification has ever confirmed these extraordinary claims. Graham Hancock's investigation in The Sign and the Seal traced a possible route from Jerusalem through Egypt to Ethiopia. Ancient papyri confirm that a Jewish temple existed on Elephantine Island in the Nile River, complete with priests and sacrificial rituals. These documents, dating to the 5th century BCE, prove that Jewish communities maintained temple practices outside Jerusalem. Could fleeing priests have carried the Ark south during the Babylonian siege, establishing a refuge in the mountains of Ethiopia? The evidence grows more intriguing. Ethiopian traditions describe Queen Makeda, the Queen of Sheba, visiting King Solomon and bearing his son, Menelik I, who supposedly brought the Ark to Ethiopia. While scholars dismiss this as medieval legend, the consistency of Ethiopian oral traditions spanning centuries suggests some historical foundation. Every Ethiopian Orthodox church contains a tablet, a replica Ark that forms the center of worship, indicating deep cultural connections to the Jerusalem temple. However, serious challenges confront the Ethiopian claims. Edward Ullendorf, a British officer who claimed to see the Ethiopian Ark in 1941, later revealed it was merely a replica crafted from local materials. Tudor Parfitt's extensive investigation dismissed the claims as medieval fabrications designed to enhance Ethiopia's religious prestige. Joe Zeus of the Israel Antiquities Authority bluntly called the Ethiopian claims trash, noting the complete absence of archaeological evidence for ancient Jewish presence in Aksum. Recent archaeological work has uncovered tantalizing clues elsewhere. The Temple Mount Sifting Project, processing soil illegally removed during Islamic construction work, has recovered artifacts spanning 3 millennia. Among the discoveries are First Temple period seal impressions, stone weights, and pottery fragments dating to the correct historical period. These finds prove that systematic archaeological investigation could yield unprecedented insights into temple treasures, if political and religious sensitivities permitted excavation.
Underground Jérusalem arbore compte le mystère.
The Western Wall tunnels reveal massive stone blocks weighing over 600 tons, demonstrating engineering capabilities that rival modern construction. Sealed chambers and hidden passages honeycomb the bedrock beneath the Temple Mount, any of which could theoretically conceal the Arkansas Talmudic sources suggest that King Josiah, aware of impending Babylonian invasion, hid the Ark in secret tunnels beneath the temple. According to these accounts, the sacred chest remains in Jerusalem, waiting for the Messiah's arrival to restore it to its rightful place. The political reality prevents definitive resolution. The Temple Mount, sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims, remains one of the world's most sensitive archaeological sites. The Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque occupy the platform where Solomon's temple once stood, making excavation impossible without triggering international crisis. Israel's Antiquities Authority strictly prohibits archaeological activity that might disturb the religious status quo, leaving the Temple Mount's secrets buried beneath centuries of political compromise. Alternative theories place the Ark in various locations. Some researchers propose that Knights Templar discovered the Ark during the Crusades and transported it to Europe. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, with its mysterious carvings and sealed chambers, attracts international attention from those seeking Templar treasures. Ground-penetrating radar confirms extensive vaults beneath the chapel, but the Sinclair family prohibits excavation, maintaining centuries-old secrets. The Vatican's vast archives have also drawn speculation. With millions of documents spanning 2 millennia, some researchers suggest that papal records might contain information about the Ark's location. However, Vatican officials have never acknowledged possessing such knowledge, and the Church's position remains that the Ark's location is unknown. Modern technology offers new possibilities for investigation. Satellite imagery can identify subsurface anomalies, while ground-penetrating radar maps hidden chambers without destructive excavation. Advanced sonar techniques could explore Jerusalem's underground networks, searching for spaces large enough to conceal the Arkansas. However, these technologies remain largely unused due to political restrictions and religious sensitivities. The mystery deepens when considering the Ark's alleged powers. If the biblical accounts of supernatural abilities are accurate, the Ark might be detectable through electromagnetic or radiation monitoring. Some researchers have proposed that the gold-covered wooden construction could function as a massive capacitor, storing electrical energy that would explain its deadly effects on unauthorized handlers. This scientific speculation, while unproven, suggests that the Ark might be more than a simple religious artifact. Recent discoveries continue to shed light on the historical context. The Tel Dan stele confirms the existence of the House of David, validating the biblical monarchy period when the Ark played its central role. Excavations at Khirbet Qeiyafa reveal a sophisticated 10th century BCE Judahite city with massive fortifications, demonstrating the organizational capacity necessary for temple construction and maintenance. Yet questions multiply with every discovery. Why do no contemporary Babylonian records mention capturing the Ark? How could such a significant object disappear without leaving traces in historical documents? Did ancient Jewish leaders successfully hide the Ark before the siege, or was it destroyed in the temple's flames? Each possibility opens new avenues of investigation while foreclosing others. The Ark of the Covenant remains history's ultimate treasure hunt, a sacred object whose discovery would revolutionize our understanding of ancient religion, challenge modern assumptions about divine interaction with humanity, and potentially validate or transform fundamental beliefs held by billions of people. Whether resting in Ethiopian highlands, buried beneath Jerusalem's stones, or lost forever to the ravages of time, The Golden Chest continues to embody humanity's eternal quest for connection with the divine realm. Until archaeological investigation becomes politically possible, or until new evidence emerges from unexpected sources, the Ark of the Covenant will remain what it has been for over 2 millennia. A mystery that challenges both faith and scholarship, promising revelations that could change everything we think we know about the relationship between heaven and earth. 2. Noah's Ark, the search for humanity's salvation. The wind howls across the desolate slopes of Mount Ararat, carrying with it the hopes and obsessions of over 150 years of searchers. At 16,946 feet above sea level, this dormant volcanic peak in eastern Turkey has become the focal point of humanity's most ambitious treasure hunt, the quest for Noah's Arkansas. According to Genesis, this colossal vessel measured 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high, creating a floating sanctuary approximately 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet tall. To put this in perspective, the Ark stretched longer than a modern football field and stood as tall as a 4-story building, making it one of the largest wooden structures ever described in ancient literature. The biblical account describes a construction project of staggering complexity. Noah received divine instructions to build the vessel from gopher wood, a mysterious material that scholars believe may have been cypress or cedar, and to coat every surface with pitch to ensure watertight integrity. The interior design included 3 decks divided into rooms, creating a sophisticated multi-level ecosystem capable of housing breeding pairs of every animal species on Earth. Conservative estimates suggest the Ark could accommodate 125,000 sheep-sized animals, with larger creatures requiring proportionally more space. The logistics alone boggle the mind. Feeding, watering, and managing the waste of this floating menagerie would have required supernatural organization. Yet against all odds, explorers continue to report discoveries high on Ararat's treacherous slopes. The most significant development emerged in 2023, when a joint Turkish-American research team announced findings that sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Led by professors from 3 Turkish universities alongside American researchers, the team focused their investigation on the Durupinar Formation, a boat-shaped geological feature first photographed from aircraft in the 1940s. The formation sits at 6,500 feet elevation, nestled in a natural amphitheater of eroded volcanic rock. From above, its outline resembles the hull of a massive ship, complete with what appears to be a bow and stern. The Turkish-American team spent years conducting ground-penetrating radar surveys, soil analysis, and geological mapping of the site. Their most startling discovery involved carbon dating of soil samples extracted from various depths within the formation. The results revealed human activity dating from 5,500 to 3,000 BCE, with the strongest concentrations around 3,200 BCE, a time frame that aligns remarkably well with biblical chronology for the flood event. Dr. Farooq Kaya of Agri Ibrahim Sisin University explained that the dating evidence suggests sustained human presence at this remote, difficult-to-access location. Even more intriguing, the team discovered bitumen deposits throughout the formation, natural tar that matches the biblical description of the Ark's waterproofing material. Advanced analysis revealed parallel lines of what appears to be petrified wood running the length of the formation. These wooden structures, if authentic, would represent the largest ancient timber construction ever discovered. The team's geological surveys indicate that the formation contains regularly spaced internal chambers, consistent with the biblical description of rooms within the Arkansas ground-penetrating radar has identified angular metal objects buried within the structure, leading to speculation about ancient construction techniques or tools. However, the mainstream scientific community remains deeply skeptical of these claims. The Institute for Creation Research, despite its commitment to biblical literalism, acknowledged in 2020 that Noah's Ark is unlikely to be found, citing the improbability of wooden preservation over such vast timescales. Professional archaeologists and geologists have repeatedly examined the Durupinar Formation and concluded that its boat-like appearance results from natural geological processes, not human construction. Dr. Lawrence Collins, a retired geology professor from California State University, conducted extensive analysis of rock samples from the site and found only naturally formed sedimentary deposits. The parallel lines interpreted as wooden beams are, according to geological analysis, simply the result of differential weathering in stratified volcanic rock. The metal objects detected by radar appear to be naturally occurring iron-rich mineral deposits common in volcanic soil. The formation's boat-like shape, while striking from above, follows predictable patterns of erosion in the region's unique geological conditions. Mount Ararat's volcanic history created layered rock formations that weather unevenly, producing elongated depressions that can resemble artificial structures. Similar formations exist throughout the Armenian highlands, though none have achieved the Durupınar site's fame. Yet the claims persist, fueled by a steady stream of expeditions reporting wooden artifacts and structural remains. The NAMI, Noah's Ark Ministries International expedition in 2010 released dramatic footage of what they claimed were wooden compartments within a glacier cave near Ararat's summit. The team reported carbon dating results of 4,800 years for wood samples, placing them within the biblical timeframe. However, geological experts who examined the footage identified the structures as natural rock formations shaped by glacial activity, not wooden construction. Irving Finkel's groundbreaking research at the British Museum has added new dimensions to the mystery. His translation of a 4,000-year-old Babylonian cuneiform tablet reveals detailed instructions for building an ark, but not the rectangular vessel described in Genesis. Instead, the Babylonian account describes a perfectly round boat like a massive coracle or floating basket. This circular design would have provided superior stability in rough seas while maximizing internal volume for the specified materials. The cuneiform tablet specifies precise measurements and construction techniques, including the use of bitumen for waterproofing and rope for structural reinforcement. Most remarkably, the tablet includes a method for calculating the vessel's proportions that results in a craft capable of floating with its described cargo. This mathematical precision suggests that the Babylonian flood account preserves genuine shipbuilding knowledge, even if the vessel's actual construction remains historically uncertain. The broader scientific challenge involves the lack of geological evidence for a global flood within human history. Mainstream geology recognizes numerous local flood events throughout history, but no evidence supports worldwide inundation during the timeframe suggested by biblical chronology. Ice core samples, tree ring data, and sedimentary deposits show no indication of simultaneous global flooding within the past 10,000 years. However, compelling evidence exists for catastrophic regional flooding that could have inspired the biblical narrative. William Ryan and Walter Pittman of Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory have documented a massive flood event in the Black Sea region approximately 7,500 years ago. Their research suggests that rising Mediterranean waters catastrophically breached the land barrier now occupied by the Bosphorus Strait, flooding an enormous freshwater lake and creating the modern Black Sea. This flood would have inundated approximately 150,000 square kilometers of inhabited land within months, displacing hundreds of thousands of people who had settled around the lake's fertile shores. The survivors would have carried vivid memories of this catastrophe into oral tradition, potentially providing the historical foundation for flood narratives found throughout the ancient Near East. The timing aligns with the emergence of agriculture and permanent settlements, making such a disaster particularly traumatic for early civilizations. Robert Ballard, the oceanographer famous for discovering the Titanic, has found compelling evidence for this Black Sea flood event. His underwater expeditions have located preserved ancient shorelines and river channels beneath 300 feet of water, confirming that a vast freshwater lake once occupied the region. Radiocarbon dating of shells from the ancient shoreline confirms the timing of the catastrophic flooding event. Satellite imagery has revolutionized the search for Noah's Ark, enabling researchers to examine potential sites without mounting dangerous expeditions. NASA's Advanced Spaceborne Thermal Emission and Reflection Radiometer, ASTER, has photographed numerous anomalies on Ararat's slopes, including what some interpret as wooden structures beneath glacial ice. However, professional image analysts consistently identify these features as natural geological formations or optical illusions created by shadows and snow patterns. The persistence of Ark claims, despite scientific skepticism, reflects deeper human needs than simple historical curiosity. The story of Noah's Ark represents ultimate salvation, divine preservation of life against cosmic destruction. In an age of climate change and environmental crisis, the narrative resonates with contemporary fears about humanity's survival and our relationship with the natural world. Recent expeditions continue to report tantalizing discoveries. The Base Institute, continuing Ron Wyatt's work, claims to have identified the Ark's location through ground-penetrating radar and conducted excavations that reveal wooden structures and ancient artifacts. Their findings include pottery fragments, animal bones, and metal objects that they argue support the site's authenticity. However, these claims have not undergone peer review or independent verification by mainstream archaeological institutions. The Turkish government has complicated the search by restricting access to Mount Ararat due to political tensions with Kurdish separatists in the region. Military permits are required for expeditions above 12,000 feet, and foreign researchers face bureaucratic obstacles that can delay investigations for years. These restrictions have limited scientific analysis while allowing unverified claims to proliferate without proper scrutiny. Climate change now threatens to resolve the mystery through unintended means. Rising global temperatures are causing Ararat's glacial ice to retreat, exposing previously hidden areas of the mountain. If wooden structures exist beneath the ice, global warming may reveal them within decades. Conversely, if the Ark's preservation depends on freezing temperatures, climate change could destroy the evidence before it can be properly documented. The search for Noah's Ark continues to attract international attention, funding, and passionate advocates who view the quest as validation of biblical truth. Whether the vessel lies preserved in Ararat's ice, rests in some other location, or exists only in the realm of inspired literature, the story embodies humanity's deepest hopes for divine protection and cosmic purpose. As expeditions continue and technology advances, the mystery of Noah's Ark remains one of archaeology's most captivating challenges. A reminder that some questions touch the very foundations of how we understand our place in the universe. 3. The Lost Tribes of Israel, a Scattered People's Hidden Legacy. The year 720 BCE marked one of history's greatest disappearances. In the ancient city of Samaria, capital of the northern kingdom of Israel, the final chapter of a once mighty nation was written not in victory, but in exile. The Neo-Assyrian war machine, having perfected the brutal art of population displacement, descended upon the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom with methodical efficiency. Reuben, Simeon, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Manasseh, and Ephraim, 10 of the 12 tribes descended from Jacob's sons, were torn from their ancestral lands and deported to the far reaches of the Assyrian Empire. Cuneiform records from the Palace of Sargon II detail the mechanics of this cultural annihilation. The Assyrian king boasted of deporting 27,290 people from Samaria, scattering them across territories stretching from modern-day Iraq to Iran, from Turkey to Afghanistan. The biblical account in 2 Kings describes their destinations: Hala, Habor, Hara, Gozan River, cities of Media, remote locations chosen specifically to prevent the exiles from maintaining their cultural identity or returning home. Yet what began as a deliberate act of cultural destruction has evolved into one of archaeology's most tantalizing mysteries. Unlike the Babylonian exile of Judah, which lasted exactly 70 years and ended with documented return, the northern tribes simply vanished from historical records. No Assyrian documents describe their liberation. No biblical accounts celebrate their homecoming. They disappeared into the vast expanse of the ancient world, leaving behind only questions that have haunted scholars for over 2 millennia. The first major breakthrough came not from archaeological excavation, but from the laboratories of modern genetics. In the remote highlands of Ethiopia, among the Beta Israel Ethiopian Jews who call themselves the House of Israel, DNA analysis has revealed startling connections to ancient Middle Eastern populations. Dr. Batsheva Bontamir's groundbreaking research at Tel Aviv University found that Ethiopian Jewish men carry predominantly Middle Eastern paternal ancestry, with Y chromosome markers linking them directly to Jewish and Arab populations of the Levant. This genetic evidence supports the Beta Israel's oral traditions, which describe their ancestors crossing the Red Sea during the time of Moses, or alternatively, arriving in Ethiopia during the reign of King Solomon. Their religious practices preserve ancient customs that predate rabbinical Judaism, including animal sacrifice, ritual purification, and calendar calculations that align with Second Temple period traditions. Most remarkably, they maintained strict adherence to biblical law for over 2 millennia in complete isolation from other Jewish communities. The Israeli government's recognition of the Beta Israel as authentic Jews led to Operation Moses, 1984, and Operation Solomon, 1991, airlifting over 160,000 Ethiopian Jews to Israel. Their integration has provided unprecedented opportunities for genetic and cultural analysis. Recent studies confirm that while their maternal lineage shows predominantly African ancestry, suggesting intermarriage over centuries, their paternal lineage maintains clear Middle Eastern origins consistent with ancient Jewish populations. Halfway around the world, in the remote hills of northeastern India, another community claims descent from the lost tribes. The Bnei Minashi, numbering approximately 9,000 people scattered across Mizoram and Manipur states, maintain oral traditions describing their ancestors' journey from ancient Israel through Central Asia to their current homeland. Their legend tells of crossing a great sea, wandering in the wilderness, and receiving divine laws on a mountain, clear parallels to the Exodus narrative. What makes the Bnei Minashi particularly compelling is their preservation of customs that mirror ancient Jewish practices. They observe Sabbath-like rest days, practice ritual animal slaughter, maintain concepts of ritual purity, and celebrate festivals that parallel Jewish holidays. Their traditional songs include names that sound remarkably similar to Hebrew words, while their genealogical recitations preserve tribal lineage systems consistent with biblical organization. The late chief rabbi of Israel, Shlomo Amar, recognized the Bnei Minashi as descendants of the tribe of Manasseh in 2005, enabling their immigration to Israel. Over 4,000 have already made Aliyah, with DNA testing ongoing to establish genetic connections. Preliminary results suggest Central Asian ancestry with possible Middle Eastern admixture, though definitive conclusions await further research. Perhaps the most scientifically compelling case comes from an unexpected source: the Lemba people of South Africa and Zimbabwe. Numbering approximately 200,000, the Lemba maintain oral traditions describing their origins in the ancient Middle East, specifically claiming descent from Jewish ancestors who migrated to Africa over 2,000 years ago. Unlike other groups, the Lemba have provided genetic evidence that has revolutionized scholarly understanding of Jewish diaspora history. Dr. Tudor Parfitt's research at the University of London documented extraordinary genetic findings among the Lemba. A significant percentage of Lemba men carry the Cohen modal haplotype, a Y chromosome marker associated with Jewish priestly lineages. This genetic signature appears at frequencies comparable to Jewish populations worldwide, providing objective evidence for Middle Eastern ancestry. Most remarkably, the Buba clan within the Lemba shows the highest concentration of Cohen markers, consistent with their oral traditions claiming priestly status. The Lemba's cultural practices further support their claims. They observe dietary restrictions similar to kashrut, practice male circumcision, maintain patrilineal descent, and preserve architectural traditions resembling Middle Eastern construction techniques. Their oral histories describe building a great city called Senna in Yemen before migrating to Africa, a tradition that aligns with archaeological evidence for Jewish communities in ancient Yemen. The implications extend far beyond individual cases. Genetic studies across diverse populations have identified Jewish ancestry markers in unexpected locations. The Pashtun of Afghanistan and Pakistan carry Y chromosome signatures consistent with Middle Eastern origins, while maintaining customs that some researchers argue preserve ancient Jewish traditions. Their tribal organization, legal systems, and genealogical records show patterns that parallel biblical descriptions. In Central Asia, the Bukharan Jews of Uzbekistan and Tajikistan claim continuous presence since the Babylonian exile period. Recent genetic analysis confirms their Middle Eastern ancestry while documenting unique mutations that suggest isolation from other Jewish populations for extended periods. Their Persian-influenced dialect preserves Hebrew and Aramaic words that predate the Islamic conquest, supporting their claims of ancient origins. The mystery deepens with archaeological discoveries that support large-scale ancient population movements. Excavations at Gozan, modern Tel Halaf in Syria, have revealed Assyrian administrative records documenting deportee communities with Semitic names. While these inscriptions don't specifically mention Israelites, they confirm that the Assyrians maintained detailed records of displaced populations and their descendants, records that could theoretically be recovered through continued excavation. The famous Josephus wrote in the 1st century CE that the 10 tribes are beyond Euphrates till now, and are an immense multitude, and not to be estimated by numbers. His contemporary sources suggested that awareness of the tribe's general location persisted into the Roman period, though specific details had been lost. Medieval Jewish travelers like Eldad Hadani claimed to have encountered tribal remnants throughout Asia and Africa, though modern scholars debate the reliability of these accounts. Recent technological advances are revolutionizing the search for tribal descendants. The Genetic Genealogy Project, led by Dr. Harry Osterer at Yeshiva University, has analyzed DNA samples from over 200 Jewish communities worldwide, creating the most comprehensive database of Jewish genetic markers ever assembled. This research confirms that most Jewish populations share common Middle Eastern ancestry despite millennia of geographic separation. The implications for modern Israel are profound. If genetic analysis confirms the tribal identity of communities like the Bnei Menashe, Lemba, or other claimant groups, it could affect Israeli citizenship policies and reshape understanding of Jewish demographics. The Israeli government currently requires conversion for most claimant communities, but genetic evidence might influence future decisions. However, the search faces significant methodological challenges. DNA degradation over millennia makes definitive ancestral connections difficult to establish. Population mixing, conversion, and cultural assimilation have blurred genetic and cultural boundaries. Some researchers warn against genetic determinism, arguing that Jewish identity transcends biological ancestry and encompasses religious, cultural, and historical factors. The political dimensions cannot be ignored. Various governments and religious authorities have stakes in tribal identity claims. Ethiopian Jewish immigration strained Israeli resources while transforming both communities. Indian states worry about losing populations to emigration. Islamic countries view Jewish ancestry claims with suspicion due to Israeli connections. Archaeological investigation continues yielding new evidence. Excavations in ancient Assyrian territories have uncovered administrative archives that might contain deportee records. Advanced dating techniques applied to artifacts from displaced communities could establish chronological connections. Linguistic analysis of tribal languages reveals Hebrew and Aramaic influences that suggest ancient connections. The mystery of the lost tribes represents more than historical curiosity. It embodies questions about identity, belonging, and divine purpose that resonate across cultures and millennia. Each genetic study, archaeological discovery, and cultural analysis adds pieces to a puzzle that spans continents and challenges assumptions about how ancient peoples lived, moved, and preserved their heritage. As research continues and technology advances, the story of the lost tribes may yet be written. Whether scattered among mountain villages in Asia, integrated into African societies, or assimilated beyond recognition into the populations of the ancient world, their legacy continues to emerge from laboratories, excavation sites, and community traditions worldwide. The 10 tribes may be lost to history, but their descendants may be hiding in plain sight, carrying within their genes and customs the remarkable story of survival against impossible odds. 4. Sodom and Gomorrah cities destroyed by cosmic fire. In the pre-dawn darkness of a spring morning nearly 4,000 years ago, the fertile Jordan Valley awakened to apocalypse. The sun had not yet risen over the eastern hills when the sky itself seemed to tear open, unleashing destruction beyond human comprehension. In seconds, temperatures soared past 2,000 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt copper and transform pottery into glass. The very air ignited, creating a fireball that consumed everything within a 25-kilometer radius. When the cosmic fury finally ended, 3 thriving Bronze Age cities lay in ruins, their populations incinerated, their buildings reduced to rubble, and their fertile farmland transformed into a wasteland that would remain uninhabitable for 6 centuries. This is not religious mythology or ancient legend. This is the story emerging from one of the most extraordinary archaeological investigations of the 21st century. the systematic excavation of Tal El Hammam, a massive Bronze Age city in Jordan that may represent the biblical Sodom. For 15 years, an international team of archaeologists, geologists, and material scientists has been uncovering evidence of a cosmic catastrophe so violent that it defies conventional understanding and suggests that the biblical account of Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction preserves the memory of an actual cosmic impact event. The city that lies buried beneath Tal El Hammam was once the largest urban center in the southern Jordan Valley, a Bronze Age metropolis covering 36 hectares with massive fortification walls rising 15 meters high and stretching 4 meters thick. At its peak around 1700 BCE, the city housed an estimated 50,000 residents across its upper and lower districts, making it larger than contemporary Jerusalem and rivaling the great cities of Mesopotamia. Its strategic location controlled trade routes between Mesopotamia and Egypt, generating wealth evidenced by sophisticated architecture, advanced ceramics, and elaborate burial goods. Yet sometime around 1650 BCE, this thriving civilization came to an abrupt and violent end. Dr. Stephen Collins of Trinity Southwest University, who has led the excavation since 2005, describes a destruction layer unlike anything previously documented in archaeological literature. "We're looking at total destruction," Collins explains. "Not conquest, not earthquake, not fire in the conventional sense, but complete, instantaneous annihilation. The evidence that has emerged from Tal El Hammam reads like a forensic investigation of cosmic violence. A thick destruction layer spans the entire site, containing shocked quartz crystals that require pressures of 5 to 10 gigapascals to form, pressures only generated by nuclear explosions or cosmic impacts. Pottery fragments show clear evidence of having been heated beyond 1,500 degrees Celsius, their surfaces vitrified into glass-like substances. Mud brick construction materials have been transformed into unusual glass formations that scientists compare to trinitite, the artificial glass created by nuclear weapons testing. Most remarkably, the research team has discovered microscopic diamonds and diamond-like carbon formations scattered throughout the destruction layer. These materials form only under extreme pressure and temperature conditions far exceeding anything possible in normal Bronze Age metallurgy or warfare. Platinum levels in the soil spike to concentrations 70 times higher than normal background levels, while iridium concentrations reach levels typically associated with cosmic impact events. The human cost of this catastrophe appears preserved in the archaeological record with horrifying clarity. Excavations have uncovered human skeletal remains showing evidence of extreme trauma consistent with sudden, intense heat exposure. Bones show patterns of rapid heating that cause them to crack and fragment in ways that parallel forensic evidence from modern fire disasters. The absence of burial goods and the scattered, disorganized nature of the remains suggest that the population had no time to flee or seek shelter. Dr. Alan West of the Comet Research Group, who contributed to the 2021 Scientific Reports publication detailing the evidence, explains the cosmic airburst theory that best fits the archaeological data. What we're seeing at Tal El Hammam is consistent with the Tunguska scale event, a cosmic object, probably an asteroid or comet fragment about 50 meters in diameter, exploding in the atmosphere above the Jordan Valley. Such an airburst would have delivered energy equivalent to 1,000 Hiroshima bombs across the affected region. The initial thermal pulse would have instantly ignited all organic materials within the impact zone, while the subsequent shockwave would have leveled buildings and created the massive destruction layer found at the site. Temperatures in the fireball's core would have exceeded those found in nuclear weapons testing, explaining the formation of shocked minerals and vitrified materials. The timing of this catastrophe aligns remarkably well with biblical chronology. Abraham's encounter with the cities of the plain, described in Genesis chapters 18 to 19, occurred during the Middle Bronze Age period when Tal El Hammam reached its maximum size and prosperity. The biblical account describes Sodom and Gomorrah as wealthy, populous cities in a fertile region, well-watered everywhere like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt. Archaeological evidence confirms this description. Pollen analysis from pre-destruction layers reveals a lush, well-irrigated agricultural landscape supporting dense population centers. The Jordan Valley's climate during the Middle Bronze Age was more temperate and humid than today, supporting the kind of agricultural prosperity described in biblical accounts. This fertile region could easily have supported the 5 cities of the plain mentioned in Genesis: Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zor. The biblical description of the destruction event itself contains details that align surprisingly well with cosmic airburst theory. Genesis describes sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven, language that could describe the thermal and chemical effects of a cosmic impact. The account mentions Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt when she looked back, possibly describing the effect of thermal radiation on human tissue or the salt contamination that would result from impact-generated tsunamis in the nearby Dead Sea. Most intriguingly, the biblical account specifies that Abraham could see the smoke of the land going up like the smoke of a furnace from his vantage point near Hebron, approximately 60 kilometers away. This detail suggests a destruction event visible across vast distances, exactly what would be expected from a cosmic airburst generating massive fires and atmospheric disturbance. The regional impact of this catastrophe extends far beyond Tal El Hammam itself. Surveys of surrounding sites reveal that at least 20 Bronze Age settlements in the region were abandoned simultaneously around 1650 BCE, creating a demographic collapse that left the southern Jordan Valley virtually uninhabited for the next 500 to 600 years. This abandonment period aligns with the biblical account's suggestion that the destroyed region became a wasteland avoided by subsequent populations. Environmental analysis provides additional support for the cosmic impact theory. Soil samples from the destruction layer contain salt concentrations up to 25 times higher than normal levels, suggesting massive contamination that would have made agriculture impossible for centuries. The source of the salt contamination remains unclear, but could result from Dead Sea tsunami deposits triggered by the impact shockwave or from the vaporization of subsurface salt deposits. However, the Tal El Hammam theory faces challenges from both archaeological and geological perspectives. Some scholars argue that the site's location north of the Dead Sea conflicts with traditional identifications of Sodom and Gomorrah in the southeastern region near Bab Edhra and Nemera. These southern sites also show evidence of destruction and abandonment during the Bronze Age, though at an earlier date and without the dramatic cosmic impact signatures found at Tal El Hammam. Dr. William Dever, a prominent biblical archaeologist, remains skeptical of cosmic impact theories, arguing that natural disasters like earthquakes or volcanic activity could produce similar destruction patterns. The Jordan Valley's location along the active Dead Sea transform fault system creates potential for severe seismic events that could trigger secondary disasters like gas explosions or massive fires. The broader scientific community has responded with cautious interest to the Tal El Hammam findings. The 2021 Scientific Reports publication underwent rigorous peer review and included contributions from 24 researchers across multiple disciplines. However, some scientists argue that more sites showing similar cosmic impact signatures would be needed to definitively confirm an airburst event of the proposed magnitude. Recent developments have added new dimensions to the mystery. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of the surrounding region have identified several other large tells that show similar destruction signatures, suggesting that the cosmic impact affected multiple urban centers simultaneously. Preliminary investigations of these sites have yielded pottery fragments with vitrification patterns consistent with extreme heat exposure. The implications of the Tal El Hammam discovery extend far beyond biblical archaeology. If confirmed, this would represent one of the most recent cosmic impact events to affect human civilization, providing crucial data for understanding the frequency and effects of such catastrophes. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, which proposes that cosmic impacts triggered the end of the last ice age, has gained support from similar evidence found at sites across North America and Europe. Climate scientists are particularly interested in the atmospheric effects that such an impact would have generated. Computer modeling suggests that a Tunguska-scale airburst over the Jordan Valley would have injected massive amounts of debris into the upper atmosphere, potentially affecting climate patterns across the eastern Mediterranean region. This atmospheric disturbance might explain the period of climate instability that marked the transition between the Middle and Late Bronze Ages. The ongoing excavation continues to yield new evidence that refines understanding of the destruction event. Recent discoveries include a massive ash layer containing charcoal fragments from buildings and vegetation incinerated during the catastrophe. Carbon dating of these materials provides increasingly precise estimates for the timing of the destruction, while chemical analysis reveals the extreme temperatures involved in the burning process. As scientific analysis continues and new sites undergo investigation, the mystery of Sodom and Gomorrah evolution from biblical account to archaeological reality demonstrates how ancient texts can preserve memories of actual historical events in ways that only modern science can fully appreciate. Whether the destruction of Tal el Hammam represents divine judgment, cosmic coincidence, or some combination of both, the evidence emerging from the Jordan Valley suggests that the biblical account of cities destroyed by fire from heaven may be far more literal than previously imagined. 5. The Star of Bethlehem. Ancient astronomy meets biblical prophecy. In the pre-dawn hours of June 17, 2 BCE, the eastern sky blazed with a celestial spectacle that had not been witnessed in living memory. Venus, the brilliant morning star, appeared to merge with Jupiter, the king of planets, creating a single point of light so dazzling that it outshone every other object in the heavens except the sun and moon. To the trained eyes of Babylonian astronomers watching from their ziggurats, this was no mere cosmic coincidence. It was a royal proclamation written in the language of the stars, announcing the birth of a king whose influence would reshape the world. This extraordinary planetary conjunction, confirmed by modern astronomical software and documented in ancient Chinese records, may finally solve one of Christianity's most enduring mysteries: the identity of the Star of Bethlehem. For 2 millennia, scholars have debated whether Matthew's account of the Magi following a star to find the infant Jesus represents literal astronomy, symbolic theology, or legendary embellishment. Now, through computer modeling that can recreate the ancient sky with pinpoint accuracy, astronomers are uncovering evidence that the Christmas star was not only real, but represented a series of celestial events so remarkable that they would have commanded the attention of every serious astronomer in the ancient world. The key to understanding the Star of Bethlehem lies not in Jerusalem or Bethlehem, but in the great libraries and observatories of Babylon, where the Magi, properly called Magoi in Greek, maintained the most sophisticated astronomical records of the ancient world. These weren't mystical fortune-tellers, but court astronomers whose mathematical precision enabled them to predict eclipses, track planetary movements, and interpret celestial omens with scientific accuracy that wouldn't be matched in Europe for over a millennium. Dr. Michael Molnar, a Rutgers University astronomer who has spent decades investigating ancient astronomical records, explains the significance of what the Magi would have observed. To understand the Star of Bethlehem, we must think like ancient astronomers. They didn't just watch the sky. They read it like a cosmic newspaper, looking for headlines that announced earthly events. The most compelling candidate for the Christmas star emerges from the extraordinary Venus-Jupiter conjunction of 2 BCE. Using modern astronomical software, researchers have confirmed that on June 17th of that year, these two planets appeared so close together that they would have looked like a single, extraordinarily bright star to naked eye observers. Venus and Jupiter are the two brightest planets visible from Earth, and their close approach would have created an object brilliant enough to be visible even in daylight. But the celestial drama didn't end there. Computer modeling reveals that this conjunction occurred in the constellation Leo, which ancient astrologers associated with the tribe of Judah and the lineage of King David. The timing aligned perfectly with the heliacal rising of Jupiter, its first appearance in the dawn sky after a period of invisibility, a phenomenon that Babylonian astronomers interpreted as signifying the birth of rulers. Even more remarkable, the astronomical calculations show that on December 25, 2 BCE, Jupiter appeared stationary in the sky when viewed from Jerusalem, creating the illusion that the planet was hovering directly over Bethlehem to the south. This stationary point resulted from Jupiter's retrograde motion, a phenomenon that occurs when Earth's orbital velocity causes outer planets to appear to reverse direction against the stellar background. Craig Chester, a former NASA engineer who has extensively researched the Star of Bethlehem, explains the significance of this astronomical alignment. From the Magi's perspective traveling south from Jerusalem, Jupiter would have appeared to stop directly over Bethlehem. This wasn't just a bright star. It was a cosmic arrow pointing to the exact location they needed to find. Earlier celestial events had already prepared the stage for this climactic moment. The Jupiter-Saturn triple conjunction of 7 BCE represents another strong candidate for at least part of the Christmas star phenomenon. Johannes Kepler first calculated this rare event in 1614, noting that the planets appeared exceptionally close together 3 times during that year due to their retrograde motions. The conjunctions occurred in the constellation Pisces, which ancient astrologers associated specifically with the Jewish people. The astrological significance of this Jupiter-Saturn conjunction cannot be overstated. In Babylonian astronomy, Jupiter represented kingship and divine favor, while Saturn symbolized justice and the protection of the Jewish people. Their triple meeting in Pisces would have been interpreted as a cosmic announcement of a Jewish king whose reign would bring divine justice to the world. The conjunction's duration, spanning nearly a year with multiple approaches, would have provided ample time for the Magi to prepare their journey. Chinese astronomical records provide crucial independent verification of celestial events during this period. The Han Dynasty's Bureau of Astronomy maintained meticulous observations that modern scholars have used to confirm the accuracy of calculated planetary positions. Chinese records document several significant celestial phenomena between 7 and 2 BCE, including what they termed guest stars and unusual planetary configurations that align with the biblical time frame. Most significantly, Chinese records describe a broom star or comet visible in 5 BCE for over 70 days. However, comets were traditionally viewed as harbingers of disaster in ancient cultures, making them unlikely candidates for announcing a joyous royal birth. The positive astronomical symbolism required for the Christmas star points more strongly toward planetary conjunctions, which were interpreted as favorable omens when involving beneficent planets like Venus and Jupiter. The sophistication of Babylonian astronomy provides crucial context for understanding how the Magi could have interpreted these celestial events. Cuneiform tablets from the Seleucid period reveal mathematical techniques for predicting planetary positions centuries in advance. The Babylonians had identified the approximately 19-year cycle that governs lunar and planetary relationships, enabling them to recognize when truly exceptional configurations would occur. These astronomical calculations required extraordinary mathematical sophistication. Babylonian astronomers used base 60 numbering systems and algebraic techniques that wouldn't be rediscovered in Europe until the Renaissance. Their ability to predict eclipses, planetary conjunctions, and other celestial events with remarkable accuracy gave them tremendous influence in royal courts throughout the ancient world. The journey described in Matthew's Gospel aligns perfectly with known trade routes and diplomatic customs of the period. The Magi would have followed the great caravan routes that connected Babylon with the Mediterranean coast, a journey of approximately 900 miles that would have taken several months even for a well-equipped expedition. The gifts they brought, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, were not only appropriate for honoring royalty, but also represented commodities that made the long journey economically viable. Recent archaeological discoveries have provided new insights into the historical context of the Magi's journey. Excavations at Palmyra and other ancient trading centers have revealed the sophisticated infrastructure that supported long-distance travel in the ancient world. Caravanserais, way stations, and trading posts created a network that made such journeys possible, though still dangerous and expensive. The astrological framework that guided the Magi's interpretation represents one of humanity's earliest scientific disciplines. Ancient astronomy developed from practical needs. Agriculture required accurate calendars, navigation demanded stellar references, and rulers sought cosmic validation for their authority. The mathematical precision required for astronomical prediction created some of humanity's first systematic scientific methods. Modern attempts to recreate the ancient sky have revealed previously hidden aspects of the Christmas star phenomenon. The planetarium software used by contemporary astronomers can precisely model celestial conditions for any date and location in history, accounting for precession, orbital mechanics, and atmospheric conditions. These calculations confirm that the biblical timeframe witnessed genuinely extraordinary astronomical events that would have commanded attention throughout the ancient world. Dr. David Hughes of Sheffield University has conducted extensive analysis of potential Christmas star candidates, evaluating each against criteria derived from Matthew's Gospel account. The star must have appeared at a specific time, been visible to Babylonian astronomers, possessed astrological significance for Jewish kingship, moved in a way that could guide the Magi's journey, and appeared to stop over Bethlehem. The Venus-Jupiter conjunction of 2 BCE meets all these criteria more completely than any other proposed explanation. Alternative theories continue to generate scholarly debate. Some researchers propose that the Christmas star was a nova or supernova, a stellar explosion that would have created a temporary new star in the sky. Chinese records do document several nova events during the relevant period, and modern radio astronomy has identified supernova remnants that could date to the biblical era. However, these stellar explosions typically fade over weeks or months, making them unsuitable for guiding a journey lasting several months. The recurring nature of certain astronomical phenomena adds another dimension to the mystery. Planetary conjunctions follow predictable cycles, meaning that the celestial conditions of 7 to 2 BCE will eventually repeat. Astronomers calculate that similar Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions occur approximately every 800 years, while Venus-Jupiter conjunctions happen more frequently but rarely achieve the same degree of proximity and brilliance. The integration of astronomical evidence with historical and archaeological data continues to refine understanding of the Christmas star phenomenon. Carbon dating of pottery and architectural remains from Herodian period sites provides increasingly precise chronological frameworks for the nativity events. Numismatic evidence from coins issued by Herod and his successors helps establish political contexts that influenced the timing of census activities and royal succession disputes. As astronomical software becomes more sophisticated and historical research uncovers new evidence, the Star of Bethlehem mystery demonstrates how ancient texts can preserve accurate observations of natural phenomena that only modern science can fully appreciate. Whether the Christmas star represents divine intervention working through natural processes, remarkable cosmic coincidence, or some combination of both, the astronomical evidence suggests that the wise men from the east were following a genuine celestial phenomenon that proclaimed to all who had eyes to see that the King of Kings had entered the world. The same heavens that once rained fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah now blazed with hope and promise, reminding humanity that the cosmos itself participates in the unfolding drama of divine purpose and human destiny. 6. The biblical giants, Nephilim, ancient accounts of supernatural beings. The sun cast long shadows across the valley of Elah as young David approached the battle line, his shepherd's sling tucked beneath his robes and 5 smooth stones weighing heavy in his pouch. Before him stood a figure that defied human proportions, Goliath of Gath, whose height the biblical text records as 6 cubits and a span, approximately 9 feet and 9 inches tall. The Philistine champion's bronze coat of mail weighed 5,000 shekels, roughly 125 pounds of armor that would have crushed a normal man beneath its weight. His spear shaft was like a weaver's beam, thick as a man's arm, while the iron point alone weighed 600 shekels, nearly 15 pounds of deadly metal. Yet, according to Scripture, Goliath was not unique. The biblical narrative describes an ancient world populated by beings of extraordinary size and supernatural origin, from the mysterious Nephilim of Genesis to the giant clans that terrorized the Israelites during their conquest of Canaan. These accounts, dismissed by many modern scholars as mythological exaggeration, are finding unexpected support from archaeological discoveries that suggest the ancient world may have harbored human populations far larger and more powerful than conventional history acknowledges. The mystery begins in the shadowy verses of Genesis 6 verse 4, where the text describes an enigmatic race called the Nephilim. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. This cryptic passage has generated millennia of debate among theologians and scholars, with interpretations ranging from the descendants of Seth intermarrying with the lineage of Cain, to fallen angels producing hybrid offspring with human women. The Hebrew word Nephilim itself deepens the mystery. Derived from the root naphal, meaning to fall, it suggests beings who have fallen from heaven or who cause others to fall in fear before them. When the frightened Israelite spies returned from their reconnaissance of Canaan, they reported in Numbers 13:33, "We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." This was no mere poetic hyperbole. The biblical text provides specific measurements and detailed accounts of encounters with giants throughout the conquest narrative. King Oji of Bashan possessed an iron bed measuring 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide, approximately 13 feet by 6 feet, suggesting a ruler who stood well over 12 feet tall. The Anakim, descendants of Anak, controlled the strategic highlands around Hebron and struck such terror into the Israelite scouts that 10 of the 12 spies recommended abandoning the conquest entirely. Archaeological evidence from the ancient Near East provides intriguing context for these biblical accounts. Excavations at Tel Es-Safi, identified as the Philistine city of Gath, have uncovered pottery sherds inscribed with names linguistically related to Goliath, confirming that such names existed in Philistine culture during the biblical period. More significantly, skeletal remains from the site indicate that the average height of Philistine males was considerably greater than contemporary Israelite populations, supporting biblical claims about physical differences between these peoples. Recent discoveries in China have revolutionized understanding of ancient human height variations. Excavations at Jiaojia village in Shandong province have uncovered a 5,000-year-old cemetery containing skeletons of remarkable size. Many of the men stood over 6 feet tall, extraordinary height for ancient populations, with some individuals reaching nearly 7 feet. The tallest skeleton measured 19 meters, 6 feet 3 inches, making him a giant by ancient standards when average height rarely exceeded 5 feet 3 inches. Dr. Feng Hui, who led the Jiaojia excavation, explains the significance of these findings. These people were not just tall by ancient standards, they were extraordinarily tall. The entire community showed evidence of exceptional height, suggesting either genetic factors or environmental conditions that promoted unusual growth. The Jiaojia giants lived in larger houses, possessed more grave goods, and appeared to hold positions of authority within their society, paralleling biblical descriptions of giants as rulers and warriors. The phenomenon extended beyond individual cases. Genetic analysis of the Jiaojia population reveals that their unusual height resulted from a combination of favorable environmental conditions, including protein-rich diets and low disease pressure, and possible genetic selection for size. This demonstrates that ancient communities could indeed produce populations significantly larger than their contemporaries, lending scientific credibility to biblical accounts of giant clans and tribes. North American archaeological sites have yielded similar evidence of unusually large ancient populations. The Adena culture of the Ohio River Valley, 1000 to 100 BCE, produced skeletal remains showing average heights significantly greater than contemporary populations. Some Adena individuals reached heights approaching 7 feet, leading early archaeologists to speculate about connections to European megalithic cultures or unknown migration patterns. The Lovelock Cave mummies of Nevada, discovered in 1911, represent another intriguing case. While not technically giants, these naturally preserved remains showed heights ranging from 6 to 8 feet, considerably larger than typical Great Basin populations. Paiute oral traditions describe conflicts with red-haired giants called Ctacah, who supposedly inhabited the region before being driven to extinction in warfare, suggesting that cultural memory of unusually large peoples persisted in indigenous traditions. However, the search for biblical giants faces significant challenges from both archaeological and scientific perspectives. Despite numerous internet claims and 19th-century newspaper reports of giant skeleton discoveries, no verified giant human remains exist in major museum collections. The Smithsonian Institution's early anthropologist Alesh Hrdlicka systematically debunked giant skeleton claims in 1934, demonstrating that most reported discoveries involved misidentified animal bones, optical illusions from photography, or outright hoaxes. The famous Cardiff giant of 1869 exemplifies the hoax phenomenon. This 10-foot gypsum statue was buried in New York and discovered by workers digging a well, generating international sensation before being exposed as an elaborate fraud designed to exploit public fascination with biblical giants. Similar hoaxes have proliferated in the internet age, with digitally manipulated photographs showing enormous skeletons being excavated by archaeologists who never existed at sites that were never excavated. Dr. Karen Ramey Burns, a forensic anthropologist who has investigated numerous giant skeleton claims, explains the scientific challenges. Human anatomy places natural limits on size. Bones and muscles can only support so much weight before structural failure occurs. Anyone approaching true giant proportions would suffer from severe skeletal and cardiovascular problems that would likely prove fatal. This anatomical reality raises questions about the nature of biblical giant accounts. The condition known as gigantism, caused by excessive growth hormone production, can produce individuals reaching 8 to 9 feet in height, but such cases typically involve serious health complications that would preclude the military prowess attributed to biblical giants. Robert Wadlow, the tallest reliably documented human in history at 8 feet 11 inches, required leg braces and a walking cane, hardly the profile of a fearsome warrior like Goliath. Yet the biblical accounts contain specific details that suggest eyewitness observation rather than mythological embellishment. The precise measurements of Goliath's armor and weapons, the genealogical records of giant clans, and the geographic specificity of encounters all point toward historical rather than legendary sources. 1 Chronicles 20 verses 4 to 8 provides a detailed roster of giant warriors defeated by David's forces, including Lami, Goliath's brother, Ishbi-Benob, and other members of the Rephaim clan. The Hebrew terminology adds another layer of complexity. Multiple words describe unusually large people in biblical texts. Nephilim, Anakim, Rephaim, Gibberim, and Emim all carry slightly different connotations that may indicate distinct groups or characteristics. This linguistic diversity suggests that ancient Hebrew possessed a sophisticated vocabulary for describing various types of large or powerful people, implying that such encounters were common enough to require precise terminology. Recent genetic research has identified populations with unusual height characteristics that parallel biblical descriptions. The Dinka people of South Sudan regularly produce individuals over 7 feet tall, with average male heights exceeding 6 feet, remarkable for any population. Their height results from genetic adaptation to their environment, combined with nutritional and cultural factors that favor tall stature. Similar genetic variations in ancient populations could theoretically have produced communities of exceptionally large people. The Watusi, Tutsi people of Rwanda and Burundi represent another example of genetically determined unusual height, with average male heights approaching 6 feet 5 inches and some individuals reaching over 7 feet. Historical accounts from European explorers describe encounters with African giants that mirror biblical descriptions, suggesting that such populations existed in various geographic regions throughout history. Archaeological evidence for biblical giants remains elusive, but the absence of evidence is not necessarily evidence of absence. The preservation of skeletal remains requires specific environmental conditions that are rare in the ancient Near East. Limestone bedrock, acidic soils, and frequent urban redevelopment have destroyed most ancient burial sites in biblical lands. The giant tombs mentioned in Scripture may have been deliberately destroyed by later populations seeking to eliminate evidence of their predecessors. The dolmens and megalithic structures scattered throughout the Middle East have traditionally been attributed to various ancient peoples, but some researchers suggest connections to the biblical giants. These massive stone constructions require engineering capabilities and physical strength that challenge assumptions about ancient technological limitations. The trilithons at Baalbek, with individual stones weighing over 800 tons, represent construction achievements that would be difficult even with modern equipment. Dr. Brian Forster's analysis of elongated skulls from Peru and Egypt has reopened questions about unusual human populations in the ancient world. While these skulls result from intentional cranial deformation rather than genetic gigantism, they demonstrate that ancient cultures placed high value on unusual physical characteristics and possessed techniques for producing them. Some specimens show cranial volumes significantly larger than modern humans, raising questions about the relationship between brain size and body proportions in ancient populations. The ongoing search for biblical giants reflects deeper questions about the nature of humanity and our relationship to the divine realm. Whether the Nephilim represent literal supernatural beings, memories of extinct human subspecies, or symbolic representations of evil and corruption, their presence in biblical narrative forces confrontation with possibilities that challenge comfortable assumptions about history and human nature. As genetic analysis becomes more sophisticated and archaeological techniques improve, the mystery of biblical giants may yet yield its secrets. DNA extracted from ancient remains could reveal whether unusually large ancient populations possessed unique genetic characteristics, while continued excavation in biblical lands might uncover the burial sites of these legendary warriors. Until then, the giants of Scripture remain suspended between myth and history, challenging both faith and science to grapple with mysteries that refuse to fit within conventional categories of understanding. 7. The Red Sea crossing, Moses' miracle and the hunt for evidence. The morning sun blazed mercilessly across the eastern desert as Moses raised his staff above the churning waters. Behind him, nearly 3 million terrified Israelites pressed against the shoreline, their cries of panic mixing with the thunder of approaching Egyptian chariots. Pharaoh's elite cavalry units, 600 hand-picked war machines with their bronze-armored warriors, had pursued the fleeing slaves across 150 miles of wilderness, determined to drag them back to bondage or slaughter them where they stood. The sea stretched endlessly before them, its depths offering only death by drowning. The Egyptian army closed from behind, promising death by sword and spear. In this moment of absolute desperation, the God of Israel would demonstrate his power over creation itself. What happened next defies every principle of physics and hydrology known to the ancient world. According to Exodus 14, a strong east wind began to blow, gathering force throughout the night until the very seabed was exposed, creating walls of water that stood like crystalline cliffs on either side of a pathway through the depths. 3 million people, men, women, children, elderly, pregnant mothers, newborn babies, crossed this supernatural highway in a single night, their feet treading on ground that moments before had been beneath fathoms of salt water. Yet for all its miraculous nature, this biblical account contains specific geographical and logistical details that suggest eyewitness testimony rather than mythological invention. The question that has obsessed archaeologists, marine geologists, and biblical scholars for over a century is deceptively simple. Where exactly did this crossing occur, and what evidence might still exist beneath the waters? The traditional answer points to the northern edge of the Red Sea, in the region of the modern Suez Canal. Here, shallow lakes and marshy areas could theoretically experience dramatic water displacement under the right meteorological conditions. Dr. Carl Drews of the National Center for Atmospheric Research has used computer modeling to demonstrate that sustained 63 miles per hour east winds blowing for 12 hours could temporarily expose land bridges in areas where water depth averages 6 feet or less. This wind set-down phenomenon occurs when persistent winds drive water away from shallow areas, exposing lake beds or coastal regions for hours at a time. Similar events happen regularly at places like Lake Erie, where strong winds have exposed miles of lake bottom, allowing people to walk on normally submerged ground. The physics are well understood and completely natural, requiring no supernatural intervention to explain the basic mechanism of water displacement. However, a dramatic alternative theory has emerged from the underwater investigations of Ron Wyatt and his successors, who proposed that the crossing occurred not in northern Egypt, but at the Gulf of Aqaba, where the Red Sea plunges to depths of over 5,000 feet between the Sinai Peninsula and Saudi Arabia. According to this theory, the Israelites crossed at Nuweiba Beach, where a remarkable underwater land bridge extends across the 11-mile width of the Gulf, creating a natural pathway between the continents. The Nuweiba crossing theory gained international attention through Wyatt's claims of discovering chariot wheels, axles, and skeletal remains on the seafloor, preserved in coral formations that supposedly represent the remains of Pharaoh's army. Underwater exploration teams continue to document coral structures that they interpret as ancient military equipment, while sonar mapping has revealed what appears to be a debris field scattered across the underwater land bridge. The topographical evidence for the Nuweiba site is genuinely compelling. Satellite bathymetry shows that the underwater crossing follows a relatively shallow path that rises from shore level to approximately 800 feet below sea level at its deepest point, then ascends gradually to the Saudi Arabian coast. This represents the only location along the entire Red Sea where such a crossing would be theoretically possible, even with miraculous intervention to displace the water. Supporters of the Nuweiba theory point to granite columns found on both the Egyptian and Saudi sides of the crossing point, which they interpret as ancient monuments marking the crossing site. Inscriptions on these columns, though weathered and difficult to read, contain Hebrew-style characters that some researchers believe commemorate the miraculous event. The columns' identical composition and placement suggest intentional marking of significant locations. Yet mainstream archaeology remains deeply skeptical of these claims. Dr. James Hoffmeyer of Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, a leading expert on Exodus geography, argues that the Nuweiba site contradicts both biblical geography and historical evidence. The crossing location lies too far south to align with the biblical itinerary, which describes specific landmarks and travel times that point to northern crossing sites. More damaging to the underwater chariot claims is the lack of independent verification by marine archaeologists. The alleged coral-encrusted wheels have never been professionally excavated, photographed under controlled conditions, or subjected to chemical analysis that would confirm their artificial origin. Marine biologists who have examined similar formations identify them as natural coral growths that can assume wheel-like shapes through normal biological processes. Dr. Zahi Hawass, former head of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, dismisses the entire Exodus account as mythology, stating flatly that really, it's a myth. No historical evidence. This position reflects a broader scholarly consensus that views the Exodus narrative as later theological construction rather than historical record. The absence of archaeological evidence for 2 to 3 million people traveling through the Sinai Peninsula for 40 years creates significant challenges for literal interpretation. The numbers themselves present logistical nightmares that challenge credulity. 3 million people walking 10 abreast would form a column stretching over 180 miles long, longer than the entire Sinai Peninsula. Managing food and water for such a population would require miraculous provision on a daily basis, while the basic mechanics of movement would necessitate supernatural coordination to prevent chaos and stampedes. However, recent archaeological discoveries have begun to reshape understanding of ancient Egyptian military capabilities and Red Sea geography. Underwater surveys using advanced sonar and submersible technology have mapped the sea floor with unprecedented precision, revealing topographical features that were unknown to earlier investigators. These surveys confirm the existence of the Nuweiba land bridge while documenting other potential crossing sites that merit investigation. The Egyptian military context adds credibility to the biblical account's details. Papyrus documents from the New Kingdom period describe chariot formations, military organization, and pursuit tactics that align closely with Exodus descriptions. Egyptian war chariots of the period were indeed formidable weapons platforms, with bronze-reinforced wheels, composite bows, and javelin quivers that could devastate infantry formations. Archaeological evidence from Pir Rames, identified as the biblical Ramesses where the Israelites began their journey, confirms the site's strategic importance as a military staging area. Excavations have uncovered massive stables, weapons manufactories, and administrative buildings that support the biblical description of a major Egyptian population center from which forced labor could be organized. The timing of the proposed exodus during the 13th century BCE coincides with the reign of Ramesses II, whose military campaigns and construction projects would have required enormous slave labor forces. The Merneptah stele from 1207 BCE provides the earliest known reference to Israel in ancient records, confirming that a people group of this name existed in Canaan during the proposed post-Exodus period. Modern technology continues to reveal new aspects of Red Sea geology that could support various crossing theories. Seismic surveys have identified underwater fault systems that could theoretically experience rapid changes in seafloor elevation during earthquake events. The region's location along the Red Sea Rift creates ongoing tectonic activity that could produce dramatic geological changes on short timescales. Satellite imagery analysis has identified previously unknown features along both northern and southern Red Sea coastlines that could represent ancient crossing points. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of coastal areas have detected buried structures that might relate to ancient harbor installations or commemorative monuments. These discoveries demonstrate that comprehensive investigation of potential crossing sites remains incomplete. The meteorological aspects of the crossing narrative continue to generate scientific interest. Atmospheric modeling suggests that certain wind patterns in the Red Sea region could indeed produce the sustained east winds described in the biblical account. The geography of the Sinai Peninsula creates natural wind tunnels that could amplify meteorological effects, particularly during seasonal weather transitions. Dr. Doran Knopf of Florida State University, has proposed that tsunami-like effects could explain the biblical account's description of walls of water on either side of the crossing. Seismic activity along the Red Sea Rift could generate standing waves that create temporary channels through shallow water areas. While such events would be extremely rare, they fall within the realm of natural possibility. The ongoing debate over the Red Sea crossing reflects broader tensions between faith-based and naturalistic interpretations of biblical events. Those who view the account as literal history continue searching for physical evidence that would validate the narrative's supernatural claims. Skeptics point to the absence of archaeological confirmation as evidence that the story represents religious mythology rather than historical fact. Recent expeditions continue to investigate both northern and southern crossing theories. Underwater archaeology teams using rebreathers and advanced diving equipment have explored deeper areas of the Gulf of Aqaba, searching for evidence of human activity that could support crossing claims. Marine geologists continue mapping the seafloor topography, looking for features that could explain the biblical account's geographical details. The Base Institute, founded to continue Ron Wyatt's research, maintains ongoing investigation of the Nuweiba site using ground-penetrating radar, magnetometry, and underwater metal detection. Their claims of discovering additional evidence remain controversial within the archaeological community, but they continue documenting anomalies that they argue support the crossing theory. Whether the Red Sea crossing represents miraculous divine intervention, natural phenomena elevated to legendary status, or theological symbolism expressing deeper spiritual truths, the search for evidence continues to drive investigation across disciplines. The possibility that physical traces of this pivotal biblical event might still exist beneath the waters keeps the mystery alive for each new generation of researchers, believers, and skeptics who struggle to understand the relationship between faith, history, and the eternal human quest for proof of divine action in the world. The same God who demonstrated sovereignty over giants and celestial bodies would prove his dominion extended to the very waters of the earth, and the evidence of that demonstration may still lie hidden beneath the waves, waiting for the right technology and the right investigators to bring it to light. 8. The Shroud of Turin, the Face of Christ or Medieval Masterpiece. In the darkness of a Turin cathedral vault, protected by bulletproof glass and climate-controlled chambers, lies a 14-foot length of linen that has sparked more scientific investigation, heated debate, and passionate controversy than any other archaeological artifact in existence. The Shroud of Turin, bearing the faint but unmistakable impression of a crucified man, represents either the most sacred relic in Christendom, the actual burial cloth of Jesus Christ, or the most sophisticated forgery ever created, a medieval masterpiece that has fooled believers for over 7 centuries. The image itself defies easy explanation. Front and back impressions of a male figure, approximately 5 feet 10 inches tall, show the unmistakable evidence of Roman crucifixion. Nail wounds through the wrists and feet, scourge marks covering the torso, puncture wounds around the head consistent with a crown of thorns, and a spear wound in the side. The anatomical accuracy rivals modern medical textbooks, while the image formation process remains completely unexplained by current scientific understanding. Yet for all the mystery surrounding its creation, the shroud's modern history began with what appeared to be definitive scientific resolution. In 1988, 3 independent laboratories, Oxford University, the University of Arizona, and the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, conducted radiocarbon dating on samples from the shroud's corner. Their unanimous conclusion sent shockwaves through the Christian world. The linen dated to 1260 to 1390 CE, placing its creation firmly in the medieval period, centuries after Christ's death. The 1988 results seemed to settle the authenticity question once and for all. The Catholic Church accepted the findings, scholars moved on to other mysteries, and the shroud appeared destined for the category of medieval religious art rather than first-century archaeological evidence. But science, like faith, sometimes demands reconsideration of accepted truths when new evidence emerges. In 2022, a revolutionary development reopened the entire authentication debate. Dr. Liberato De Caro of the Institute of Crystallography in Italy published groundbreaking research using wide-angle X-ray scattering, WAXS, analysis, a non-destructive technique that measures cellulose degradation patterns in ancient linen. His analysis of threads from the same corner area used in the 1988 carbon dating suggested a dramatically different age, 55 to 74 CE, precisely contemporary with the death of Christ. De Caro's team compared the shroud samples with linen specimens of known age, including fabrics from Masada, 55 to 74 CE, and medieval samples from various European sources. The X-ray scattering patterns showed that the shroud's cellulose degradation matched the ancient samples rather than medieval textiles, suggesting that the notorious 1988 radiocarbon dating may have been fundamentally flawed. The implications were staggering. If De Caro's dating proves accurate, it would represent one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in history, authentic first-century evidence potentially connected to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. But the findings also highlighted serious questions about the reliability of the 1988 carbon dating that had seemed so conclusive. Recent statistical analysis of the original 1988 data, finally released after 30 years of restricted access, reveals troubling anomalies that cast doubt on those landmark results. Dr. Tristan Casabianca's forensic examination of the raw measurements shows significant heterogeneity in the samples. The pieces of cloth used for dating showed different carbon-14 levels despite coming from the same area of the shroud. This variation suggests either contamination of the samples or fundamental problems with the dating methodology. The statistical analysis reveals what scientists call systematic error, the kind of methodological flaw that invalidates experimental results. The three laboratories' measurements, while internally consistent within each lab, showed patterns that suggest the samples themselves were not representative of the original cloth. This discovery has prompted calls for new radiocarbon dating using improved sampling protocols and contamination controls. But the dating controversy represents only one dimension of the shroud mystery. The image formation mechanism continues to defy scientific explanation despite decades of intensive study. The 1978 STURP, Shroud of Turin Research Project, investigation involved 33 scientists using the most advanced analytical equipment available, including X-ray fluorescence, infrared spectroscopy, and microscopic analysis. STURP's conclusions were remarkable. The image was not painted, drawn, or applied using any known artistic technique. No pigments, dyes, or binding agents could be detected on the cloth fibers. The image formation affected only the outermost surface of individual linen fibers, penetrating less than 0.2 micrometers into the fiber structure, thinner than the wall of a soap bubble. This superficial coloration, affecting only the topmost fibrils of surface fibers, has never been replicated using known artistic or photographic methods. Even more extraordinary, the image contains three-dimensional information encoded in its intensity patterns. When processed through VP8 Image Analyzer software, originally developed for NASA to analyze planetary surface images, the shroud produces accurate three-dimensional representations of the human form. This characteristic is unknown in paintings, photographs, or any other image formation process, suggesting a mechanism that somehow recorded distance information between the cloth and the body it covered. Dr. John Jackson, a physicist who led the STURP investigation, explains the significance. What we're seeing is not just an image. It's a three-dimensional record of spatial relationships. The intensity of the image at any point corresponds directly to the distance between the cloth and the body surface at that location. No known artistic technique produces this effect. The blood evidence adds another layer of complexity to the authentication question. Microscopic analysis confirms the presence of real human blood with characteristics consistent with traumatic death. The blood shows high bilirubin levels, a chemical marker that appears when blood is exposed to extreme stress or trauma. The blood patterns align precisely with what forensic pathologists would expect from crucifixion wounds, showing gravity flows, clotting patterns, and separation of red blood cells from serum. Dr. Frederick Zugibe, a forensic pathologist who spent decades studying crucifixion, analyzed the shroud's wound patterns and concluded, "The blood flows are anatomically correct for every single wound. You cannot fake this level of medical accuracy without modern forensic knowledge that simply didn't exist in medieval times." Recent technological advances continue revealing new evidence that supports authenticity claims. Scanning electron microscopy has identified limestone particles embedded in the cloth that match samples from Jerusalem quarries. Pollen analysis by Dr. Max Free identified 58 plant species, including several that grow only in the Jerusalem area and others native to Turkey and France. Geographical markers that align with proposed historical routes from Jerusalem through Constantinople to Western Europe. The atomic force microscopy investigation by Dr. Giulio Fanti has documented blood particles and wound details invisible to conventional photography. His analysis identifies hemoglobin derivatives and traces of myrrh and aloes, spices mentioned in John's Gospel as being used in Jesus' burial preparation. The presence of these expensive aromatics suggests high-status burial practices consistent with Gospel accounts. Perhaps most remarkably, recent analysis has identified what appears to be text written in various ancient languages around the facial area. Using enhanced imaging techniques, researchers claim to have identified Aramaic, Greek, and Latin letters spelling words like Jesus, Nazarene, and died. While these findings remain controversial and difficult to verify, they suggest possible connection to first-century burial practices. The scientific challenges to medieval origin theories continue mounting. Medieval art historians note that the shroud's image shows anatomical knowledge that wouldn't emerge until Renaissance dissection studies. The correct positioning of nail wounds through the wrists rather than palms reflects archaeological discoveries about Roman crucifixion techniques that weren't understood until the 20th century. Medieval artistic conventions would have placed nail wounds in the palms, following traditional Christian iconography. The weaving patterns identified in the cloth also support ancient origin claims. The shroud shows a complex herringbone weave using Z-twisted threads that align with first-century Palestinian textile techniques documented at sites like Masada. Medieval European weaving typically used different patterns and thread preparations that don't match the shroud's construction. Contamination theories attempt to explain the 1988 dating discrepancies through natural processes that could have skewed the results. Raymond Rogers, a chemist who participated in the Stirp investigation, proposed that the carbon dating samples came from a medieval repair patch rather than original fabric. His chemical analysis identified vanillin and lignin in the 1988 sample area, compounds absent from the main body of the shroud but consistent with medieval textile treatments. Water damage from the 1532 fire in Chabéry, France, could have introduced carbon contamination that would make the cloth appear younger than its actual age. The silver reliquary that housed the shroud melted during the fire, potentially creating chemical reactions that deposited carbon-rich materials on the linen surface. Subsequent washing and handling over centuries could have added additional contamination layers. Microbial contamination represents another potential source of dating error. Dr. Leoncio Garza Valdez has documented bacterial and fungal growth on ancient textiles that can significantly affect radiocarbon measurements. These microorganisms incorporate modern carbon from the atmosphere, creating biofilms that make ancient materials appear much younger than their actual age. The resurrection radiation theory attempts to explain both the image formation and potential dating anomalies through a single mechanism. Some researchers propose that intense radiation during the resurrection process could have created the image while simultaneously altering the cloth's carbon isotope ratios. While this theory ventures into theological territory that science cannot test, it demonstrates the lengths to which researchers will go to reconcile apparently contradictory evidence. Critics maintain that the cumulative evidence still favors medieval origin. The shroud's documented history begins only in the 14th century, with no reliable records of its existence before that time. The Bishop of Troyes' famous 1389 letter to Pope Clement VII described the shroud as cunningly painted, and claimed that the artist had confessed to creating it, though this letter's authenticity and accuracy remain disputed. The absence of the shroud from earlier historical records creates what scholars call the missing centuries problem. If the shroud is authentic, how did it survive from the 1st century to the 14th century without leaving any documentary trace? Proposed explanations involve transfer from Jerusalem to Edessa to Constantinople during the Byzantine period, but definitive historical evidence for this route remains elusive. Recent developments continue generating new evidence and fresh controversies. The 2024 analysis using advanced spectroscopic techniques has identified additional anomalies in the image formation that challenge both artistic and natural formation theories. Machine learning algorithms applied to high-resolution photographs continue revealing previously undetected details that may provide new clues about the image creation process. Whether the Shroud of Turin represents authentic burial cloth of Jesus Christ, sophisticated medieval creation, or some combination of ancient relic and later modification, it continues challenging both faith and science to grapple with evidence that refuses to fit comfortable categories. The cloth that may have wrapped the body of the man who claimed to be God incarnate remains suspended between heaven and earth, between faith and doubt, between scientific materialism and transcendent mystery. A fitting symbol for the enduring questions that define the human search for ultimate truth. As new dating techniques emerge and analytical capabilities advance, the Shroud mystery demonstrates that some questions may ultimately transcend the boundaries of empirical investigation, requiring integration of evidence, interpretation, and faith that reflects the deepest mysteries of existence itself. 9. The Holy Grail, Christianity's ultimate treasure hunt. The torchlight flickered against ancient stone walls as the knight descended into the underground chamber, his heart pounding with anticipation that had driven him across continents and through decades of searching. Somewhere in the darkness ahead lay the ultimate prize of medieval Christendom, the Holy Grail, the cup that had touched the lips of Jesus Christ during the Last Supper and, according to legend, caught his precious blood as it flowed from the cross. For nearly 2 millennia, this simple vessel had inspired quests, wars, literary masterpieces, and fevered expeditions that continue to this day, transforming from historical artifact into the embodiment of humanity's eternal search for the divine. Yet the very simplicity of the Grail's origins makes its current mystery all the more remarkable. According to the Gospels, Jesus took a cup during the Passover meal in an upper room in Jerusalem, blessed it, and shared it with his disciples, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." It was an ordinary vessel, probably carved from local stone or wood, used for ritual wine in a Jewish household. Nothing in the biblical account suggests that the disciples recognized any special significance in the physical cup itself. The miracle lay not in the vessel, but in Christ's words and sacrifice. The transformation of this simple cup into medieval Europe's most coveted treasure reflects one of history's most remarkable evolutions of religious symbolism. The earliest gospel accounts make no mention of the cup's preservation or special powers. It was medieval Romance literature, beginning with Chrétien de Troyes' 12th century Perceval, that created the mystical Grail legend, weaving together Celtic mythology, Christian symbolism, and Arthurian adventure into an irresistible narrative of quest and redemption. By the 13th century, the Grail had acquired miraculous properties in popular imagination. It could heal wounds, grant eternal youth, provide nourishment, and reveal divine truths to the worthy. Robert de Boron's Joseph of Arimathea connected the cup directly to the crucifixion, claiming that Joseph used it to catch Christ's blood at Calvary before carrying it to Britain, where it became the foundation of early Christian mission. Yet behind the medieval literary fantasy, serious historical investigation reveals multiple artifacts with legitimate claims to ancient Christian origins. The most compelling candidate resides in Valencia Cathedral, Spain, where the Santo Cáliz has been venerated as the authentic Grail for over 6 centuries. This remarkable vessel consists of a 1st-century agate cup, dark red with natural banding, mounted in an elaborate medieval base of gold filigree, pearls, and precious stones. Archaeological analysis of the Santo Cáliz reveals extraordinary details that support its ancient origins. The agate cup measures 95 centimeters in diameter and 7 centimeters in height, dimensions perfectly suited for ritual use in a 1st-century Palestinian Jewish household. The stone's composition and carving techniques align with Eastern Mediterranean craftsmanship from the Roman period, while its style matches other artifacts recovered from contemporary archaeological contexts. Dr. Maria Jesus Beltran, former director of Valencia's Archaeology Service, explains the significance of the scientific analysis. The cup portion definitely dates to the 1st century CE and originates from the Eastern Mediterranean region. The craftsmanship, materials, and style are all consistent with high-status vessels from Roman Palestine during the time of Christ. The Santo Cáliz historical documentation traces back through papal records, monastic chronicles, and royal inventories to the monastery of San Juan de la Peña in the Aragonese Pyrenees. where it reportedly arrived in the 8th century. According to tradition, the cup was carried from Rome by Spanish deacon Lawrence before the persecution of Emperor Valerian in 258 CE, hidden in his native Huesca to protect it from destruction. While the complete chain of custody from Jerusalem to Valencia cannot be definitively proven, the documentary evidence far exceeds that available for most claimed religious relics. Papal bulls, royal charters, and monastic records create a paper trail that spans over a millennium, establishing the Santo Cáliz presence in Spanish Christian tradition long before the Grail romances made such relics fashionable. Yet the Spanish claim faces competition from one of Europe's most mysterious locations. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, whose elaborate stone carvings and sealed underground chambers have captured international imagination since Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, transformed it into a symbol of hidden knowledge and suppressed truth. Built by William Sinclair between 1446 and 1484, the chapel's intricate symbolism blends Christian, Jewish, Islamic, and pagan motifs in ways that continue to puzzle scholars and fuel speculation about Templar treasures and sacred relics. The Rosslyn Grail theory centers on the chapel's possible connections to the Knights Templar, the military religious order that controlled Temple Mount in Jerusalem during the Crusades. According to this hypothesis, Templar Knights discovered the Grail during their excavations beneath Solomon's Temple and transported it to Scotland when the order faced suppression in the early 14th century. The Sinclair family's documented connections to Templar leadership and their construction of Rosslyn's elaborate underground vaults provide circumstantial support for this theory. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of Rosslyn Chapel have confirmed the existence of extensive underground chambers beneath the structure, spaces large enough to house significant artifacts or treasures. The Sinclair family, current guardians of the chapel, has consistently refused permission for archaeological excavation, maintaining that the vaults should remain undisturbed out of respect for ancestral burial sites and family tradition. Robert L. D. Cooper, curator of the Grand Lodge of Scotland and author of several books on Rosslyn Chapel, acknowledges the underground chambers while dismissing Grail theories. Yes, there are vaults beneath the chapel, and yes, they almost certainly contain Sinclair family burials and possibly other artifacts. But the idea that they house the Holy Grail or other Templar treasures is pure speculation without historical foundation. The third major Grail claimant emerges from Glastonbury Abbey in Somerset, England, where Christian tradition places the arrival of Joseph of Arimathea shortly after the crucifixion. According to legend, Joseph traveled to Britain carrying the Grail and established the first Christian church in the British Isles, planting his staff on Weariall Hill where it miraculously grew into the famous Glastonbury thorn that bloomed twice yearly until its destruction by Vandals in 2010. Archaeological investigation at Glastonbury has uncovered evidence of remarkably early Christian activity, predating the traditional arrival of Augustine's mission to Britain by several centuries. Excavations in the abbey ruins have revealed 5th to 6th century church foundations, high-status burials with Christian symbols, and artifacts suggesting connections to Mediterranean Christian communities. While this evidence doesn't prove Joseph's presence, it confirms that Glastonbury hosted significant Christian activity much earlier than previously documented. Dr. Roberta Gilchrist of the University of Reading, who has conducted extensive archaeological work at Glastonbury, explains the site's significance. Glastonbury clearly functioned as an important Christian center from the 5th century onward, with evidence of wealth, learning, and international connections. Whether this relates to Joseph of Arimathea is impossible to prove, but the early Christian presence is undeniable. The modern Grail quest has expanded beyond medieval claimants to embrace new theories about the cup's possible survival and location. Some researchers propose that the authentic Grail remains hidden in Jerusalem, possibly in the extensive tunnel systems beneath the Old City that have been largely unexplored due to political and religious sensitivities. Archaeological surveys using ground-penetrating radar have identified numerous sealed chambers and passages that could theoretically house early Christian artifacts. Recent technological advances have enabled non-invasive investigation of potential Grail sites without destructive excavation. Advanced imaging techniques, chemical analysis of trace materials, and isotopic studies of claimed relics provide new tools for evaluating authenticity claims. However, these methods also highlight the fundamental challenge facing Grail investigators. Even if a 1st-century cup were discovered with provable Palestinian origins, establishing its specific connection to the Last Supper would remain impossible without contemporary documentation. The transformation of Grail symbolism from literal cup to spiritual metaphor reflects broader developments in medieval Christian mysticism. Writers like Wolfram von Eschenbach reimagined the Grail as a stone that fell from heaven, while others described it as a book, a bloodline, or a state of spiritual enlightenment. This symbolic evolution suggests that the Grail's true significance may transcend any physical artifact. Modern Grail theories have embraced increasingly speculative interpretations that blend historical investigation with esoteric spirituality. The bloodline theory, popularized by books like Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and the Da Vinci Code, proposes that the Sangreal, Holy Grail, actually refers to Sangreal, royal blood, representing the sacred bloodline of Christ preserved through his supposed marriage to Mary Magdalene and their descendants in medieval European nobility. While genetic studies could theoretically test bloodline claims, the absence of verified DNA samples from Jesus or his family members makes such investigation impossible. The bloodline theory also faces the fundamental theological objection that Christianity has always maintained Christ's celibacy and purely divine nature, making human descendants inconsistent with traditional Christian doctrine. Archaeological investigations continue at various claimed Grail sites, though political and religious restrictions limit access to many potentially significant locations. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem remains largely off-limits to systematic excavation, while other sites face ownership disputes, cultural sensitivities, or practical difficulties that prevent comprehensive investigation. The Nantios Cup, a medieval wooden bowl long claimed as the Grail by Welsh tradition, underwent scientific analysis in 2014 that dated it to the 14th century, eliminating it from serious consideration as the authentic Last Supper cup. Similar scientific dating has discredited numerous other claimed Grail artifacts, demonstrating how modern analytical techniques can resolve questions that remained mysterious for centuries. Yet the persistence of Grail legends in popular culture suggests that the quest represents something deeper than simple archaeological investigation. The search for the Holy Grail embodies humanity's longing for direct contact with the divine, for proof that sacred events actually occurred in historical time and space, and for artifacts that can bridge the gap between spiritual faith and physical reality. Recent discoveries continue adding new chapters to the Grail story. The 2014 discovery of a 4th-century Christian chapel beneath Valencia Cathedral provided additional context for the Santo Cáliz historical setting, while renovation work at various European churches occasionally uncovers medieval artifacts that require evaluation for possible Grail connections. The digital age has revolutionized Grail research through online databases that enable comparison of artifacts, documentary sources, and archaeological evidence across multiple sites and institutions. Virtual reality reconstructions allow researchers to explore destroyed or inaccessible locations, while artificial intelligence assists in analyzing vast archives of medieval manuscripts for previously overlooked Grail references. Whether the authentic Holy Grail rests in a Spanish cathedral, lies hidden beneath Scottish stone, sleeps in an English abbey vault, or exists only in the realm of spiritual metaphor, the search itself continues to reveal new insights into medieval Christianity, archaeological methodology, and the eternal human quest for sacred connection. The cup that once held wine at a Passover table in Jerusalem has become a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest hopes and fears about the intersection of divine purpose and historical reality. As investigation techniques advance and access to restricted sites potentially expands, the Grail mystery demonstrates that some treasures may be more valuable for the searching than for the finding, embodying questions about faith, evidence, and transcendence that define the human condition itself. 10. The Tower of Babel, humanity's ancient skyscraper. The morning mist hung low over the Mesopotamian plain as thousands of workers converged on the greatest construction site in human history. From every corner of the known world they came: Akkadians and Sumerians, Elamites and Amorites, speakers of dozens of languages united by a single overwhelming ambition: to build a tower whose top would reach into heaven itself. The year was approximately 612 BCE, and King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon had ordered the reconstruction of Etemenanke, the legendary house of the foundation of heaven and earth, a massive ziggurat that would stand as the tallest structure in the ancient world and, according to biblical tradition, become the focal point of one of history's most dramatic divine interventions. The biblical account in Genesis 11 describes an earlier version of this same ambitious project. Come, let us build ourselves a city, with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth. The narrative presents a humanity united in language and purpose, determined to create a monument to their own greatness that would prevent their dispersion across the globe. Yet their technological triumph would become their spiritual downfall, as God confused their speech and scattered them across the earth, leaving their great tower unfinished and their unity shattered forever. For centuries, scholars dismissed the Tower of Babel as pure mythology, a theological explanation for linguistic diversity rather than historical record. Then, in the mid-19th century, archaeologists working in the ruins of ancient Babylon began uncovering evidence that transformed the biblical account from religious parable into documented history. The massive foundations of Edom and Enki emerged from beneath centuries of sand and debris, revealing construction techniques, workforce organization, and architectural ambitions that matched the biblical description with startling accuracy. The archaeological evidence paints a picture of construction on an almost unimaginable scale. Edom and Enki's base measured approximately 300 feet square, nearly matching a modern city block, while rising to a height of roughly 300 feet, making it taller than a 25-story skyscraper. The structure required an estimated 85 million baked bricks, each weighing about 33 pounds, creating a total mass of over 14 million tons. To put this in perspective, the tower contained more material than the Great Pyramid of Giza, while rising to a greater height than any structure built in the ancient world. The construction techniques described in Genesis: "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. Let us use brick instead of stone, and tar for mortar," align perfectly with archaeological evidence from the site. Babylonian engineers had perfected the art of producing waterproof, durable bricks using bitumen as mortar, a technology that enabled construction far exceeding what was possible with ordinary stone building methods. The bitumen came from natural seeps in the region, providing an abundant supply of this crucial binding agent. Dr. Andrew George of the University of London, who has extensively studied Edom and Enki and its cuneiform documentation, explains the tower's significance. This wasn't just a building. It was a statement about human capability and divine connection. The Babylonians believed they were literally constructing a bridge between heaven and earth, a stairway for the gods to descend and ascend. The most remarkable confirmation of the biblical account comes from cuneiform tablets discovered in Babylon's ruins, including the famous Esagila tablet that provides detailed measurements and construction specifications for Edom and Enki. These documents describe gathering workers from across the Babylonian Empire, using multiple languages and ethnic groups to complete the massive project. The tablets record the same international character described in Genesis, with peoples from throughout Mesopotamia contributing to the construction effort. One particular cuneiform text, translated by Dr. George Smith in the 19th century, describes the tower construction in language that directly parallels the biblical account. The building of this Tower of Babylon was a sin. The gods in anger also took up this evil deed. They broke down what they had built. They scattered the people abroad. Their strong place they made strange. Their speech made different. The correspondence between biblical and Babylonian accounts suggests that both traditions preserve memory of the same historical events. The scale of workforce required for Edom and Enki's construction provides insight into the confusion of languages described in Genesis. Estimates suggest that the project required 10,000 to 15,000 workers at peak construction periods, drawn from dozens of ethnic and linguistic groups throughout the Babylonian Empire. Managing such a diverse workforce would have created enormous communication challenges, especially for a project requiring precise coordination of complex engineering tasks. Mesopotamian construction practices of the period support the possibility of language-based project failure. Large building projects required detailed verbal coordination between workers, engineers, and supervisors. Miscommunication could lead to dangerous accidents, structural failures, and work delays that would threaten project completion. If divine intervention caused sudden communication breakdown among the international workforce, the project would have become literally impossible to complete safely. Archaeological evidence from the site reveals that Edamananke remained unfinished for extended periods, with construction stopping and restarting multiple times throughout its history. Alexander the Great reportedly ordered the tower's reconstruction around 323 BCE, but his death ended the project before completion. These historical interruptions align with the biblical account's suggestion that the original tower was never finished, left abandoned when its builders were scattered across the earth. The linguistic aspects of the Babel account find support in historical evidence for language change and dispersion in ancient Mesopotamia. The transition from Sumerian to Akkadian as the region's dominant language occurred during the period when the earliest versions of Edamananke were constructed. This linguistic shift, combined with the increasing diversity of languages within the expanding Babylonian Empire, provides historical context for the confusion of languages described in Genesis. Cuneiform records document the complexity of managing multilingual populations in ancient Mesopotamia. Administrative tablets reveal that Babylonian officials struggled with translation problems, miscommunications, and coordination difficulties when dealing with diverse ethnic groups. These practical challenges would have been magnified in large construction projects requiring precise technical communication among thousands of workers. The theological significance of Edamananke in Babylonian religion adds another dimension to understanding the biblical condemnation of the tower project. The structure functioned as a ziggurat, a sacred temple platform designed to serve as a dwelling place for Marduk, Babylon's patron deity. The tower's name, Edamananke, literally translates as House of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth, indicating its function as a cosmic axis connecting the divine and human realms. This religious purpose explains the biblical account's emphasis on human pride and divine judgment. From a monotheistic Hebrew perspective, the tower represented idolatrous attempt to reach God through human achievement rather than divine revelation. The project embodied precisely the kind of prideful self-reliance that biblical tradition consistently condemns, making it a natural target for divine intervention. Modern archaeological techniques continue revealing new evidence about Edamananke's construction and the broader historical context of the Babel narrative. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of the site have identified previously unknown foundation structures that suggest the tower was even larger than originally estimated. Satellite imagery analysis has revealed the complex urban planning that surrounded the tower, showing how the structure dominated the ancient city of Babylon. Chemical analysis of brick samples from the site has confirmed the sophisticated bitumen-based construction techniques described in biblical and cuneiform sources. The quality of brick production and the precision of construction demonstrate technological capabilities that rivaled modern engineering standards. This evidence supports the biblical portrayal of the tower as an unprecedented technological achievement that pushed the boundaries of human capability. Recent excavations in Babylon have uncovered worker housing areas that provide insight into the international character of the construction force. Pottery styles, cooking implements, and religious artifacts from these residential areas represent diverse cultural traditions from across the ancient Near East, confirming that the project drew labor from multiple ethnic and linguistic groups, as described in both biblical and Babylonian sources. The broader historical context of ancient Mesopotamian building projects provides additional support for the plausibility of the Babel account. Large-scale construction projects in the ancient world routinely employed international workforces, often including captured populations, voluntary migrants, and specialized craftsmen from distant regions. The diversity of skills required for massive construction necessitated drawing workers from multiple cultural and linguistic backgrounds. Climate data from the relevant historical period indicates that the environmental conditions in Mesopotamia could have supported the agricultural surplus necessary to feed and house a large construction workforce. Archaeological evidence for extensive irrigation systems and granary complexes around Babylon confirms that the city possessed the infrastructure necessary to support major building projects lasting multiple decades. The technological legacy of Edamananke's construction influenced building techniques throughout the ancient world. The sophisticated use of bitumen, the precision of brick manufacturing, and the engineering solutions developed for tall construction spread to other regions through trade and cultural exchange. These innovations demonstrate that the Tower Project, whether or not it reached heaven, significantly advanced human technological capability. contemporary parallels to the Babel narrative continue emerging in modern construction projects that push the boundaries of human engineering capability. The challenges of coordinating international workforces, managing complex logistics, and solving unprecedented technical problems echo the same themes described in the ancient account. These modern experiences lend credibility to the biblical portrayal of Babel as a project that ultimately exceeded human organizational capacity. The ongoing archaeological investigation of ancient Babylon continues yielding new insights into the historical reality behind the Babel narrative. Recent discoveries include additional cuneiform tablets describing tower construction, artifact assemblages that illuminate daily life during the building period, and architectural evidence that refines understanding of ancient Mesopotamian engineering techniques. Whether the Tower of Babel represents literal divine intervention, natural organizational failure of an overly ambitious project, or theological interpretation of historical events, the archaeological evidence confirms that the biblical account preserves accurate memory of genuine historical construction projects that challenged the limits of ancient human capability. The tower that sought to bridge heaven and earth remains buried beneath the sands of Iraq, a monument to both human ambition and the recognition that some boundaries between divine and human realms may be more fundamental than architectural engineering can overcome. The same impulse that drove ancient Babylonians to build their tower toward heaven continues motivating modern skyscraper construction, space exploration, and technological advancement, humanity's eternal quest to transcend natural limitations and reach beyond the constraints of earthly existence. Whether this represents divinely implanted aspiration or dangerous pride remains as relevant today as it was on the plains of Shinar over 4 millennia ago.